Hello, everybody. Welcome to a very special bonus episode of This Is My Bourbon podcast, where friends talk about what makes bourbon the spirit of Kentucky. See, I'm going to throw it in, tease it for the new year.
Yeah, I like it.
My name's Perry. Thank you all so much for listening. And with us this week is Curtis, half of the home base co-hosts. The dog is going crazy. We're going to have to take something away from her. We are still recording pre-Christmas. So, Kurt, hey, bud.
Hey, what's up?
Hey. In real time, we've been hanging out for hour and a half. But we're doing this little special bonus episode about our favorite bourbons of the year. Just to kind of surprise y'all with...
little bonus episode.
Little bonus episode, So we're not going to go on for nearly as long as we normally do with this episode. But, Kurt, I have my list of the bourbons of my favorite bourbons of 2017, or what I think the best bourbons of 2017 have been.
Okay.
So how do you want to do this? Do you have a list, or do you just have your number one?
I just had one.
Okay.
But I'm sure I could probably come up with a few.
Okay. So here's what I'll do then. Because I know that our number one
is the same
one.
Okay.
So here's what
Let's talk about it in tandem. How about?
That's fine. Yeah, that's
fine. You
fine.
give your list, and then when you get to number one,
that's what I was planning.
All right, cool.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to actually start out with my honorable mention of the year,
Okay.
And that is Jefferson's Pritchard Cask Finish bourbon. It's they just take regular Jeffersons and they finish it in Pritchard wine casks. It's really good. I had it over Thanksgiving, and also had it at Bourbon and Beyond back in September. And I love it. It's really smooth. It's very different for what a bourbon is typically expected to be, just because it's a little bit sweeter. Dog's hanging out with us in case you haven't been able to tell. She's jingling around in the background. I had it at like I said at Thanksgiving. It paired really well with Thanksgiving bourbons or Thanksgiving dinner.
Okay.
It's not. Never mind. Like
Which
I said,
will go really well with Christmas dinner.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the honorable mention for 2017 Bourbon of the Year. At my number 5, I have 1792 225th anniversary, which was released in honor of Kentucky's 225th anniversary. It's bottled at 92.15 proof, 92 for being 1792, the year that it was founded, 15 for Kentucky being the 15th state in the Union. I actually did an uncorking of it with Chad and Sarah on its bourbon night.
Okay.
So if you want a full review of that, go and check that out on YouTube. You had that, I think, at my house a couple months ago.
I did.
How did you like it? You were, of course, a big fan of 1792.
Yes.
How did you like it in comparison to...
I really enjoyed it. It had a different... if you go into it expecting you're going to get 1792...
It's very different.
It's very different from that. And bear with me because it was a while ago since I tried it.
Sure.
But it had a different profile, but still that smooth, very good finish, and the palate's very nice. Yeah, definitely. We're going to pour a little bit. So,
Kurt's like, I may as well. Because our number one is not getting poured right now.
No.
I'm going to let you... Here, I'm going to let you switch that around.
All right.
Knock that water back. You know what? I'll pour a little bit for myself as well. I think this was honestly kind of... Okay, maybe I'll get to it eventually. I think this was one of the bigger surprises of this year. Whereas it wasn't like... I was like, sure, it's going to be good, but I didn't think that it was going to be as good as it turned out to be. It doesn't have quite as much to it as I would like.
Okay.
Some of the other bourbons on my list.
Yeah. And now it's given... Okay.
Yeah.
It's given me a good refresher.
Yeah.
Got a lot of that sweet oaky flavor.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, it's older than regular 1792.
Yeah.
It's 10 years old, or kind of around 10 years old, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So it's it's been in oak for longer.
Which
than
I'm
normal.
sure that's why I'm getting more of those notes than regular 1792.
And it's got a whole lot of like sweetness to it and
Yes.
caramel and everything. I'm happy with this. So that was my number 5, 1792, 225th anniversary. I'll try to say that right on the third try. Number 4 for me was Jim Beam Distiller's Cut, which was a release that just came out. Yeah.
Okay.
This again was one that was really, really surprising to me. I wandered into Liquor Barn and wandered. Sounds like I didn't have the intention of going in there. Like somebody blindfolded me and was like, "Hey, go wherever you want to." Oh, I'm in Liquor Barn.
Yeah, exactly.
How do I wind up here?
Wandered into there.
No, I went into Liquor Barn and was just kind of looking for something new to get. And the Jim Beam Distiller's Cut was sitting there on the shelf, and I was like, "Oh, I could try something new." And it's a non-chill filtered bourbon. It's 100 proof. It's not anywhere. It's between 5 and 6 years old. So it's A, older than regular Jim Beam, B, a higher proof, and it's non-chill filtered. So a lot of the, as we've talked about before, the fatty acids that are, normally taken out are still in there.
Yeah.
So this, to me, the reason that this is on my list, A, because I really have enjoyed it, and B, because this to me is what I think Jim Beam should taste like. Like when I want to drink Jim Beam, I'm gonna be drinking Distiller's Cut.
Okay.
Because it has some of the sweetness that Jim Beam normally has, but it just kind of kicks it up a little bit.
Yeah.
It makes it more enjoyable for me. You again had that too.
Yes.
Would that not have been in your top 5?
In my top 5?
Yeah, for the year.
I would say no, just because I've had so many bourbons lately that I've never had before.
Sure.
And that's just a tribute to us starting the podcast and me actually going out and exploring new things and trying new things.
Sure.
So I think that's why. Dog.
Sorry, dog.
So
as you can tell, like this episode is still like in tandem with how we normally.
Yeah, we still have to deal with the dog.
There's nothing but uncut and unfiltered here on This Is My Bourbon podcast,
Yes.
and yes, I am talking about you, dog.
So I think that's my biggest thing is that since we started the podcast, I've tried so many different bourbons.
It's hard to remember it all.
Yeah. A, B, I think I've tried so many different like higher up bourbons that I've never had before.
Sure.
That I think I have to put.
Maybe I needed to qualify this before we started. The way that I have justified this is stuff that's come out this year.
Okay.
As like my
gotcha.
top of
Yes,
2017.
Yes. Okay.
So number 4 out of the 5 that I think are the best 5 that came out in 2017 is Jim Beam Distiller's Cut, and number 5 was 1792. Anyway, number 3 for me was Four Roses Small Batch Limited Edition 2017 edition. I know I said edition twice, but it doesn't matter. I'm trying to make a point. For me, this was a bourbon where I can't remember life before it.
Really left a mark on you.
It did, and that's the same way that I felt about number 2 and number 1 on my list, where that like I really started thinking about bourbon at that point.
Okay.
And I had been thinking about it a lot before, of course. We've been talking about doing this show for a long time.
Yeah, it's been.
And I mean, we've had plenty of bourbon nights since,
Even before.
Yeah, exactly. But it was one of those where like I had it and I couldn't stop thinking about it. Okay. And I was like, I have to try this again. And there was something about it that just really pushed me into going, oh, there's a lot out there that I need to really take the time to enjoy and look for. But I just thought that there was something really special about this. And, not only was it just full of caramel and oak and everything that I really like, but I always, when I think back to it, think of like I was biting into like my favorite cookie.
Okay.
And I mean, it's just like a real kind of homey feel to it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I
I understand though.
I haven't had it in a little while. Again, it's a limited edition bourbon.
You're not going to get it often. It's just,
No. But I was a really big fan of it. So, of course I put it at number 3 on my list. Number 2 for me, similar to, but not exactly what Whiskey Advocate did this year for their number 1.
All right.
Elijah Craig Barrel Proof Batch B517. Which, if you are a regular listener of the show, you know that I reviewed with Will and the Grease of the podcast a few episodes ago. Big fan of it. Man, for a barrel proof bourbon to have all of the things that I love in a bourbon, in terms of like, the caramel and the oak and the vanilla and everything, but just to really push it up a notch. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a
better bourbon.
A better one, except for my number 1, which we'll talk about in a second, because we have the same number 1,
yes.
Of course. If you can find my number 2 bourbon is easier to find, of course, than what our number 1 is going to be. So if you can find Elijah Craig Barrel Proof B517 out there, absolutely go and get it, because for an uncut and unfiltered bourbon to have so much flavor and so much, character to it as this one does, I mean, I'm happy that I was able to try it, and that I was able to stumble upon it in the way that I did, by walking into a liquor store one day, and the guy was like, I just remembered we have one sitting in the back. Do you want it? I was like, yes, I do want it.
That's so serendipitous.
No, it's absolutely. And, I mean, that's just, I couldn't have asked for a better way to try something like Whiskey Advocate's Bourbon of the Year. So I can't recommend that one enough. But
Number 1,
the big drum roll, please. The big winner of the year is something that we actually tried on the show.
Yeah, we did.
And it was for it being our second review
is impressive.
That was one of those things where I was like, this shouldn't be happening right now.
No, yeah, we shouldn't have had that at that point.
even looking back on it now, I'm like, this was ridiculous for us to have tried it. So, for regular listeners, that we're talking about William LaRue Weller from the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection of 2017.
Yes.
I'm going to let you talk about it first before we start.
I mean,
diving into it.
How do we not?
I know.
Like, gosh. So I still had a little bit left over. And so I tried it before I came here and before we recorded. And it is everything I wanted and everything I remembered about it.
Absolutely.
It was just so good. The nose, it has this smoky, like, just charred, sweet caramel smell to it.
Yep.
And then you taste it, and the palate.
I mean, it just explodes.
It explodes.
And
there's so many flavors,
mm-hmm.
and it just keeps going. And as you keep sipping, what I realized, and this was even tonight, I realized that there were so many different flavors that I didn't catch last time.
Yeah.
That I caught this time.
Absolutely.
It was funny because I was talking to my mom, and when I started drinking it, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And she was like, "What?" I was like, "It's just so good, Mom." So it's just really good. Yeah.
Well, like thinking back on it, I wish that I could rescore it, because I would give it an almost perfect score.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point I would have given it a 19 out of 20.
I would say that.
And the only place where I would have kind of
price.
is price, exactly. I would have given it a 4 out of 5 instead of a 5 out of 5, because it's just so expensive. But at the same time, like, I can't not justify the quality of the bourbon, you know. But again, 5 years ago, it was, instead of $110, it was $60 or $70.
Yeah.
So, they're reading the market. Buffalo Trace is reading the market.
Yeah.
But they, that to me still means that it's a $60 or $70 bourbon.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with Weller.
It is.
With regular Weller, where, it's always been, up until about 10 years ago, 5 to 10 years ago, it's always been $20 or under dollar bourbon. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden people started realizing what it was.
Hyped it up
and it started getting hiked up to like $30, $40, $50. And that's just the special reserve. That's not even taking into account the antique or the 12-year.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that a 4 would have been where I sat, at this point with the price. But everything else, absolutely would have given it a 5. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. It was so good. Just everything you want, and then it also surprises you when you're drinking it.
Oh, for sure.
It just surprises you. You're like, oh, I didn't notice that. Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah. So, I mean, just to very quickly wrap this up, because this has gone on actually a little bit longer than I thought it was going to, but my absolute number one for this year was the William LaRue Weller.
I agree.
And I mean, I can't say enough good things about it. Curtis agrees with me, so I've got somebody sitting here who, it's not making me. I'm not going crazy.
Yeah, I'm sure Tanner would agree, and I think that's probably our top one.
Yeah, definitely. So anyway, that about does it for this little bonus episode of This Is My Bourbon podcast. Thank you all so much for listening. If you want to hit us up on social media, it's at My Bourbon Shop on Instagram and Twitter. This is My Bourbon Shop on Facebook. This is My Bourbon Shop at gmail.com. If you want to send us an email, if you have questions, use the hashtag This Is My Bourbon Podcast. Go check out our shirts and apparel and merchandise and everything at My Bourbon Shop, or just Bourbon Shop rather, .threadless.com. We'd love for you to buy some of our swag, because there's plenty of it on there, and all of it goes to supporting this show. And it keeps the lights on, so
keeps the mics on.
Keeps the mic. Ooh, yeah, there we go. Keeps the mics on.
Keeps the mic on.
Anyway, thank you all so much for listening. We really do appreciate it, and happy holidays. Enjoy your new year, and we will see you all in a couple of weeks. But until then, I'm Perry.
I'm Curtis,
and this is My Bourbon Podcast.